Okay, welcome everyone again. As you already saw in the it's very stressful, huh? The short movie. There's a lot of fantastic things we do at the Weizmann Institute, specifically at the Department of Neuroscience, and this was just a taste. But I'm going to tell you today specifically on our field of research, which is stress. And what is stress? And I'm going to use very simple video cartoon in order to try and explain the concept. What is stress? What is the stress response? Why it's important to study? Why it's relevant to animals. So I hope all of you are relaxed, feeling well, because we're going to talk about stress. So we all know what stress is. Yeah, we feel it inside us, we feel it around, regardless of age or gender, sex, occupation. We all have those feelings which are associated with stress. So let's assume we are walking in one of those beautiful parks I saw here in Mexico City, not far away. We walk in, enjoying the nature, and from nowhere, a lion start running toward us. Yeah, I heard you have a lot of lions here in Mexico City. So in a millisecond, your brain will perceive this threat, this stressor. It will activate what is known as the stress response. And when I say perceive, we have different sensory systems. Yeah, we can see, we can smell, we can hear. It's not really important how we notice this threat, this stress. This will activate a system, and this system collectively is called the stress response. And what will happen in the stress response? It's a response which is activated by the brain, and I'm sure all of you can describe this. If someone just cut you on the road or got a very distressing phone call, you will feel this increase your heart rate, in your blood pressure, even your blood glucose level. Sugar in your blood will go from 100 to 160 or 180. But not only, and of course your cortisol, the stress hormone will go up, but not only in your body, also within your brain, your emotion will change. Yeah? The level of anxiety and fear will increase if I have a lion right here. Your memory, your cognition is going to change. Your locomotion, your movement will change. Some of you will freeze, some of you will run. Your attention, your focused attention will change. It's a big audience, a lion just entered. It will take you, in average, like 10 seconds when you will notice the lion. But when this response will be activated, all of you will be very focused. You're going to look for the danger. So if a tiger will now enter, it will take you milliseconds to recognize it. Okay, so almost even more. What about appetite? Your appetite is going to be inhibited immediately. You don't need to think about food when you have a lion right here. Yeah? Your reproductive system is going to be inhibited. You don't need to think about sex when you have a lion here. Your immune system is going to change. So almost every system in your brain and body will respond to this activation, to this stressor. But is it good for you to do this? Is it good to take all the system in your body and brain and take it out of homeostasis, out of balance? All the systems that I just mentioned exist in a very specific border. Yeah, we all know we have a heart rate in a specific range, we have blood pressure, we have blood glucose level. If it's going out, we take medication to control it. So it's always, we need to keep it in a very clear border, very clear balance, homeostasis. But when we activate this response, the stress response, we take it out of this level. It goes usually much higher. But is it good? Yes, it's good, and it's normal, and it's healthy. The stress response is a survival response, okay? It's conserved through evolution, from fish to human, okay? It's the same gene, the same protein, the same brain circuit, which regulate this, okay? So why we still have a problem? So we have a lion, we activate this response, but let's assume that this response what is actually running toward us is not a lion. It's Danny, my friend, in a lion costume. Yeah. But we already activated the stress response. Everything is already up. So in a minute we realize that the stress is not relevant anymore. The stressor is not. The lion is not here. The phone call was just false alarm. Someone almost hit that in the road, but everything is fine. The system have to switch off and restore homeostasis, bring everything back to the initial steady state. Okay? And this is very important. So the stress response have two parts, two stages. One is activating the response. It's a survival response. I need to survive. You exist only to survive, to reproduce, and to eat. Yeah? This is the three main things that we need to do. So survival is extremely important. So the body will do everything to survive. Okay, but in a minute we understand it's not relevant, everything is out of balance, out of homeostasis. We need to go to bring everything to the initial state. Okay? Okay, so why I'm telling you all this? Why it's even important to study the way the brain and the body is coping with stress. One issue is, okay, we are scientists. We do it from our curiosity. I would say even our obligation as a scientist to understand this amazing machine which is called the brain. This is a good enough excuse to study the way the body and brain responds to stress. The second thing, not less important, is the fact that we know that when this response, the stress response, is not properly controlled, when it's not properly regulated, it's strongly associated with large number of diseases and disorders. And it's a large number of diseases and disorders, and which include anxiety and disorders, depression, PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorders, eating disorders, but not only psychiatric disorders, also metabolic disorders such as type 2 diabetes and obesity, heart-related, immune-related, reproductive-related, and even cancer. So you do Google today, you put any type of disease you ever heard of, and you put stress, you will find some information. And I will explain in a minute why. But in most of the cases, the data, the information we have is what we call epidemiological information. It's statistics, okay? If you are working in a very stressful job, you are a traffic controller in the airport. It's very stressful apparently. For 10 years, 20 years, the chance you will develop depression or type 2 diabetes is significantly high. And the same, you can take more traumatic stress and not chronic stress, a short and strong stress. Again, you will have a lot of statistics about this. But the question, the big question is why? Okay, why, when we're exposed to stress, acute or chronic, we develop diseases? Okay, we don't understand. This is what we are trying to do, and what we do in the last 20 years is to understand the mechanisms. Okay, what exactly is happening in the brain, in the nerve cells? What are the genes? What are the proteins? What are the circuits in the brain which are responsible for this? And this is a very major question. Other very important question is why some of us are more resilient. Why some of us will be exposed to stress, and we all know people like this, who will not develop disease, while others will develop, and I will try to go and describe this a little bit. And you can actually see it here. So what exactly we are missing here? Why some of us will be very relaxed, it can be very, very stressful work or stressful life, but they will never develop a stress-related disease. Okay, why they are more resilient than other people, and vice versa, why we have other people which develop a disease when they're exposed to stress. And this is a very important point to understand. Stress is environmental factor. It's very similar to what you drink, what you eat, what you smoke, what you breathe. But stress is probably the most important environmental factor that affects your health. It is the most investigated one. Okay? And any person here in the audience, including me and Danny and everyone else, is carrying within his DNA, within his genetic material, what we call genetic predispositions. Okay, we're all human, we're all the same strain, but we are different. And we are different in those small nucleotides within our DNA which make us more susceptible to develop a disease. Some of us will have those changes which will make us more sensitive to develop depression or Alzheimer or lung cancer. But it's not all about your genes. It's many times about how your genes interact with the environment. Okay? And this is a very, very important point. In the way that the environment is talking to your genetic material, there's a big name to those mechanisms which call epigenetics. Genetics is the letters of the DNA, but epigenetics is the modification we have on top of those building block of your DNA. Okay? And I will mention this. It's a very, very important field currently at the Weizmann, but also worldwide. So first, it's not always our fault. We can always blame our parents because they gave us our genes. So at least 50% we are not. We don't need to blame ourselves. Okay. So let's take, for example, this scenario. Okay. These are identical twins. Yeah. Meaning they have the exact same genetic material. They're not brothers, with identical twins. Okay. But let's say those identical twins were separated on birth, and one grew up, I don't know, in a big island in Hawaii, very happy, drinking coconuts all day, very relaxed environment, Cancun maybe, something like this, very nice. And his poor brother grew up, in Israel, in Gaza, around the Gaza Strip, and they have missiles and siren multiple times a day. So the chances, they have the exact same genetic material. The chances that this person, this twin, will develop stress-related disorders are significantly higher. Okay? But again, they have the exact same genetic material, meaning the environment is very, very important. Okay? And again, as I mentioned before, this is done via different mechanisms. I will not go into the details in this type of more public talk, but this is what we investigate exactly. What are the changes? What are the molecules which affect the DNA? How the stress in the environment talk to your DNA? And we have multiple discoveries now. We even have now developed a drug which should, mainly for depression and mainly for patients cannot, or other treatments do not work with depression, based on this type of research that we did in the last 10 years. So, as you know, stress can also come in different tastes or different flavors. Okay, it can be very strong and acute or traumatic. It can be chronic, as I mentioned, but it could be very relatively mild. It could be purely psychological. Okay, it doesn't have to be something which is physiological, but it could be also physiological. You can bleed. You can have a virus attacking you. But again, it could be lions, it could be your boss at work, it could be family member. You can think about hundreds of different types of stressor. What is very important, the stress can affect you in different stages of your life. As adults, most of us are adults, we have one baby here, as a baby, and most importantly, even as an embryo. Okay? Meaning the fact that the mother is the person that is affected by stress, but while she is pregnant, she's transmitting this information to her developing baby. And I want to spend a few minutes on this point because I think it's a very important point. In the last 2-3 years, we have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge about stress during pregnancy. So is the fact that this embryo was affected early in its development, while he was still in his mother's womb, this will eventually determine the way that he or she will be more sensitive to develop disease later in life. Because I want to show you and I will convince you that it is indeed very, very important. We have a lot of data coming both from humans and from animal models. So let's try to picture this scenario. Okay, we have the pregnant woman, and she lives in a war zone. Okay, where again there are missiles and sirens. What type of signals she's transmitting to her baby? You need to remember the purpose of, think about the evolution. What we want this baby to be. The mother wants this baby to fit the best to the environment he's going to grow in. Okay? So what type of signal she is transmitting to the baby? Okay, via different hormones, the blood system, and so on. War, you need to survive. Okay, so if you're now developing yourself, and remember, we are in a stage that the brain is developed, the whole body is developed. So he said, if you want to survive in this war zone that you need to run the whole time and look for danger, you better be fast, you better be small, you better put your attention to the surrounding, always look for danger, increase your vigilance. Okay? And I will give you in a minute another example, which is, it's a normal process, which is a good process, yeah, because you want to be adapted to your environment. Okay, so Mazel Tov, the baby has been born, and the family moved from a war zone, they moved to live in Tel Aviv. Very safe area, relatively, like Mexico City. These kids have a normal childhood, everything is fine, but then we put him in a classroom in the age of 6, together with 30 or 40 kids in Israel, but he was designed to always to look for his attention to the surrounding. Yeah, he cannot sit 8 hours per day and look to the same direction, to the same teacher, to the same board. How we will define this type of kid? Having what? ADHD, an attention deficit. But he's totally fine. He's totally normal kid. He was designed differently. He was designed to explore. If you take this kid and you put him in an open school to run and pick up leaves and present to his classroom, he will be the best student. Okay? So there is some of what we call a mismatch between the way he was designed to the way he's actually living now. Let me give you another example without cartoon. We have a pregnant woman. She lives in a very poor area. Not enough nutrients, not enough food, not enough vitamins. What signal she's giving to her baby? You're now developing your body, your cells and everything. You should, and outside not enough food, you should learn, you should build your body to conserve, to save energy. So if a normal kid will eat and will burn 50% and will save 50% as fat and so on, you should burn only 30% and eat and store 70%. Okay, this kid, again, Mazel Tov, normal childhood, everything is okay. He's moving to an area that is enough food, Western country, that even everything is bigger and more fatty. Even if he's eating exactly like his friend, exactly like his classmate, exactly the same amount, he is saving more. He is storing more. So of course this kid eventually will develop metabolic syndrome, obesity, type of diabetes, and so on. Okay. We can talk about what we can do about this, but I just want to make the point that this, what we call early life programming, is extremely important. How eventually you're going to develop and cope later in life. And we know this from human literature for many, many years, from Second World War, from the other big catastrophic event, traumatic event in a mega scale, that kids that grew up in those or were pregnancy during those type of period, the chance that they will develop depression, anxiety, metabolic syndrome, heart-related, and so on, are significantly higher. Okay? Even we can take the latest one, which is September 11 in the US, because it was New York, and New York there's it's a large population, and during this traumatic event we had the female pregnant in the first trimester, second trimester, and third trimester. You can actually even compare the different three trimesters, okay? And we showed recently increase in PTSD-like, increase in eating disorders, in anorexia-like, and in bulimia-like, okay? And this is all related to problem with exposure during pregnancy. Doesn't mean that everyone who have attention deficit, ADHD, is necessarily due to this, but of course the environment to stress eventually heavily contribute to this. Okay, what about differences between men and women, male and female? Are we responding the same to stress? No. So both behaviorally and hormonally, men and female are responding differently to stress. Okay? I didn't mention a lot cortisol, but all of you I'm sure heard about cortisol. It's the stress hormone. It's going to stress you, and after a few minutes they're going to take your blood test. You will see a significant increase in your cortisol level in the blood. In the morning I show a bit more scientific here in the Institute for Psychiatry. We talk a little bit more about this. But female, for example, have a higher cortisol level than men. Okay, you know why? It's not because estrogen is increasing cortisol. It's in contrast. Testosterone in male are inhibiting cortisol. Okay, so the level in females are the normal level, and the level in male are inhibited. But also behaviorally, by average, men and women are responding differently to stress. I don't want to talk about the reasons. There's all kind of thought why, which are less relevant maybe today in some of the culture, that females are more responsible for their offspring, and that's the reason they need to be much more vigilant and aware and protected and protective and so on. But we don't care about this. And the main reason it's important is the fact that stress-related disorders such as depression and anxiety is 2 to 3 times higher in female than in male, and we don't really understand why. Okay? The prevalence of depression in female is 2 to 3 times higher than in male, and currently treating the same. Yeah? And we don't know why. And it's many times the fault of the scientist, because for many, many years, even in preclinical studies, people who work with animal models, we always work only with males. And the reason we work with males is because it's much, much cheaper. Okay? Because females, even mice and rats, have estrous cycle. Yeah? And in women it's 28 days, in mice it's 4 days. Every day is a different stage of the cycle. And as we all know, in different stage of the cycle you have different mood. So for each, if you have males, we have 1 experiment group and 1 control group. If we have females, we need 4 control groups. Yeah? So it's 4 times more expensive. However, it's extremely, extremely important. Okay, and now, I don't know if you know, but in the US, the NIH now force anyone who want to get money from NIH, have to include female in the study. Okay? So every study, and now it's spreading all over, and it's very, very important, but it costs money. Okay, probably not less important is the medical need. Okay, I mentioned a lot of disorders here, but let me just focus for a minute on psychiatry related, on depression and anxiety and eating disorders. We have solutions. Okay? There's a lot of problems when I can talk a full hour just about the issues in psychiatry, but bottom line, we don't have solutions for many of those patients. Okay? If you have a depressed patient now, which is severely depressed, okay, not can wake up in the morning and then maybe take his pill or took himself and go to work, not very happy, but he can eventually work. There are many people that are cannot do it, and they need to be hospitalized and so on. And those people will try every type of drug in the market, but nothing will happen. Okay, so this is around 30 to 35% of the patients don't have any treatment available today. And this is a huge medical need. We're still using the same drug, the same antidepressant drug like Prozac, same concept. There's new drug with different names, but all the same, okay? Discovered 50 years ago. And those drugs, if you have now depressed patients coming to the clinic, you want to treat him, and you start the treatment, starting the treatment, it will take between 4 to 8 weeks before the drug is even start working. So what do you do in between? So we need better drugs. We need drugs that will work faster, and we need a drug that will have much less side effects. Let me tell you very briefly about one project that we are doing now that I'm not sure you're aware, because many people take antidepressants. In the US, it's every kid who don't want to go to school is getting antidepressants. It's very easy. There are different countries. I don't know how is it in Mexico, but it's very easy to get prescription to antidepressants. Okay? And 50% of the cases, the first time you take the drug doesn't do anything anymore. Okay? And then there's a lot of side effects. Then people stop taking it. So some people it's working, so it's great. But I can at least tell you that psychotherapy today, talking to someone, percentage-wise, is good as any drug that you're taking. Okay, just think how much we don't yet understand. Okay, so the only solution, in my view, will only come from doing very high-quality basic science. Okay, we need to understand how the brain functions, how the brain works, under basal condition, under healthy condition, and also under pathological condition. Okay, so we need to understand how the brain functions. We can eventually develop new ways. So I want to go back to the example I started telling you about. So when children, and there's a growing number of children treated with antidepressants. When I say children, it's all the way from 12 to 18. I know it's a different age, but these are what we call kids and adolescents. Even you can see in the clinic kids which are 10 years old, which are coming with depression. But it is something which is very scary, is that around 10% of the kids which are coming with depression, anxiety to the clinic, and you start treating them, they will commit suicide because of the treatment. Sounds strange, but listen. They will commit suicide, or will have what we call suicidal ideation, suicide attempt, because of the treatment. It's also happening in adults, but in around 1%. In kids, it's around 10%. And then around 10 years ago, 8 years ago, the FDA in the US figured out that this is a big issue. And then he said, oh, we stopped treatment for children and adolescents with antidepressants. And then what happened? You look on the graph of suicide, a few months after they stopped, all the 50% of the kids that the drug is actually beneficial stopped going to suicide. So the graph eventually went up in average, because this is 50% and this is 10%. So the FDA said, oh, not good, let's put the drug back. And you know what they did? They just put, and you can Google it, put black label. They just put like on cigarettes, on the drug, on antidepressants, they have this may be dangerous to your kid, follow, blah, blah, it may commit suicide. Okay? So in the last 3 years, we have a big project with several hospitals of children, and which kids are coming, and kids are always the best because they don't have any history of treatment. They're coming, they're totally clean. We do all the evaluation, then we take blood, we start treatment, and then we take blood again after 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, and whenever they have side effects. Okay? And what we want to see is to find something in the blood that can predict this. Okay? And this is really, really new. This is from last week. Now we have 95% ability, just by a blood test, to identify those kids. So the only thing we need to do now is a company to develop a kit, to develop a blood test that can identify those 10% of the kids. Okay, and this is just one example of very basic science without even developing a drug, without developing a treatment. You can just develop a diagnostic tool to prevent a lot of suffering and a lot of unnecessary death, especially of young people. Okay, so maybe we'll finish with being a little bit more positive. Of course, help is needed, and as I already mentioned, we need education. Okay, so let's try to finish it a bit more positive. So what can we do about it? How can we reduce the level of stress, or even treat or improve our state of anxiety or depression? I already mentioned one of the most efficient way is psychotherapy. Okay, going and talking to a psychologist. I don't know how it works here in the medical system, but sometime in Israel, although we know it's a better treatment sometimes, you need to wait 3 months for your appointment, so it's easier to go to the pharmacy and take the drug. Many times, and this is the best solution, is the combination. So most of psychiatrists will combine. Okay? You do psychotherapy. It really depends. In Germany, where I also work, psychotherapy is the first line. Okay? First do psychotherapy, and then they will do drugs. Okay? In the US, it's very easy to get drugs. Okay? In Israel, it really depends how much you pay. The best scientifically proven method is exercise. No one needs to be an Ironman. No one needs to run marathons. Everything you do a little bit more. You go with the elevator to your office, take the stairs. Okay? Everyone according to his abilities, needs, and a combination of aerobic, combination of muscles. This is the only scientifically proven way of generating new brain cells in the relevant area to overcome depression, for example, anxiety. Again, I said this once in a talk in Detroit, and then 2 ladies came to me in the break and said, "But look, we are depressed, we don't want to go and run." Okay, so it's a bit of a circular thing. So if you can do it, do it. But you always have to remember that we do have people who cannot do it. They cannot take themselves or drive themselves to go and run or do anything. So for those people, we need other solution. But maybe we should learn what's happening in the brain when we run, and then we can try and mimic this, yeah, by other means. Any type of social activities. Okay, I'm not promoting alcohol drinking here, although wine a little bit is always good. Any type of what we call enrichment, social enrichment, anything that makes you feel good. Okay, I like working in my garden. People like go fishing. Anything, reading a book, sitting with your friends, anything that help you, give you good feelings. Some people do meditation, yoga. Anything that help you is the way, definitely a way to go. Or again, just come and visit our amazing institute, the Weizmann Institute. I'm sure you will feel amazing by just visiting or walking there. So I will stop here and be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much. And I can even get translation to the questions. Please. Yes. English or Spanish? English, perfect. Shh.
One moment.
Meditation was some of the themes, how exactly the better, stress, chronic pain, things like that. And then, like you said, if the person has to be engaged, like in exercise, feeling like going to the session, like arriving. But once people are there, they benefit from that. Even when I work with some people after the earthquake last year, where you can see this cathartic thing. Well, basically, feel like really something.
And again, this is one of the things, I don't know if all of you heard, but I will repeat this. She is working with people in different type of approach of mindfulness. Those who are familiar with mindfulness, it's very famous now. Breathing and other methods, and she can clearly see this improvement. The people can cope better by doing so. You know, for me as a scientist, as a very basic scientist, it's a big conflict, okay? Because I'm you know, the way we do science, especially at the Weizmann, we are very clear with our hypotheses and what we are changing and so on. And it's very hard in this type of field, okay? In one way, I tell you, we need to understand the brain in the most detailed way, like you saw in the movie, okay? We want to look exactly on which genes, which protein, how nerve cells talking to each other. And this is what we do on a daily basis. This is one side. The second part is the current situation of those pathologies, okay? We don't have better solution. And the only way to go, eventually to have better solution, is to do very, very good basic science, basic and translational science. But in the meantime, when we don't have other solution, because always when I give a talk, people ask me, so, okay, so what we can do? This is what we can do. Okay? This is the only thing we can do. And we can use the available medications, because for some people they are working, okay? Despite side effects, there are some minor side effects, there are even more severe side effects, so it's all about balancing, whether it's actually benefit or not benefit. But till then, I totally agree. Anything that makes you feel good, mindfulness is fantastic. Maybe use the microphone and then everyone can hear you.
The food that we eat has some influence to improve the bad or the good.
Okay, fantastic question. Okay, so remember that I told you about this pregnancy and what is the long-term effect of the pregnancy. And then it's okay, wow, so that's all? Can we fix it somehow? So I didn't tell you the whole story, of course. What happened during pregnancy is that this stress leaves some signature in the DNA of the developing embryo, okay? And this signature is like a memory for the DNA. So when the kid is born, everything is fine, and he grows up, everything is fine, until he's exposed to stress. If he would not be exposed to stress, everything would be fine. And the minute it will be exposed to stress, the memory of the embryo is like surfacing, is going out. Okay? And this is done, I cannot go too much into the mechanism, it's called DNA methylation. The DNA going through this chemical modification called methylation. And we showed last year that with the diet, we showed it in anorexia nervosa. Okay? We showed that we can, in the diet, in the food, we can give this food which have, it's called methyl donor. And so I don't want to be too scientific, but that eventually with the right diet, we can influence the phenotype, we can influence the disease process. Okay? And this is very, very interesting. This actually is a whole field now. It's called nutrioepigenomics. It's how your food is affecting the way you behave. And I'm now totally ignoring your microbiome. I'm totally ignoring all your bacteria, which is another very, very big topic now. Okay, in the Weizmann is one of the biggest topics. Apparently the bacteria you live with are very important for how you feel, how much is your blood glucose level, whether you're gonna, almost for everything, yeah? You have to be careful with this, but apparently they're very important.
Yes, Professor Chen, could you comment on the research that compares placebo with antidepressants?
Yeah. So, this is exactly making my point about psychotherapy even stronger. Okay, we have studies on placebo which showing that the effect of antidepressants is almost like placebo. It really depends which study you read, and which make us very worried. Yeah, and this is the reason we need new pathways, new targets for. Do you think, the antidepressant we take today, it's called SSRI, maybe it's a family of antidepressants, which we know how they're supposed to work, okay? If they indeed supposed to work on the way we think they're working, it should work in a few hours. Why it takes 4 to 8 weeks? Apparently it is something that caused something, that caused something, that caused something, and then this is what influences. So we don't even know how it works. Yeah? And we take it for 50 years now, at least, since a little bit more. And this is industry of billions every year. Again, I don't want to totally exclude it, because for some people it's working. And you need to understand the reason for this. The reason is not that you don't not only understand the brain enough. It's the fact that depression or anxiety, like autism, spectrum, is not one disease. My depression and Danny's depression could be totally different. I can even make it more complicated. The symptom that I exhibit and Danny, we both have nightmares and we both don't want to come to work and stay on this stage. Exactly the same. But the underlying mechanism for Danny depression and my depression could be totally different. This is one scenario. Second scenario is that me and Danny have exactly the same mechanism of the disease. We both have the same mutation, we both have early life stress. But we both each gonna show a totally different set of phenotype. We both will be depression, but it look very different. This is the complexity. Okay, so we don't even define probably the disease. What will happen in 5, 10, 20 years? That we will have depression type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, okay? And then we have a drug for this type and that type. Because it's not one disease. It's a spectrum. Okay, so we need not only to understand better, we also need to define better the disease. And you know what the main problem is? We don't have a test to define the disease. Okay, I cannot do biopsy. I cannot do blood test. I cannot put you in the scanner and scan your brain and say, oh, you have depression. We don't have objective measure we don't have what we call biomarkers. And this is what many people, including us, working on. We want to get biomarkers for a disease. I want to go to the doctor and do a blood test and tell me what I have. And this is the big issue in psychiatry. We don't have biomarkers. This is where we want to be. Okay? Which is still not perfect. Yes. So you control it because I don't see everyone. Yes.
Okay, regarding stress and depression, what is the difference between ADHD people and people with no ADHD? Are people with ADHD more vulnerable?
Okay, it's a very good question. So let me first say that many years scientists thought that depression, anxiety, post-trauma, and ADHD are all very, very different diseases. We don't have a common. Today we know there's a lot of overlap in the mechanism for all these diseases. Okay, there's a lot of what we call comorbidity. Many people will have depression, but also will have anxiety. In children, it's like 80% of them which have depression will also have anxiety. Okay, the same with attention deficit. It can come as a secondary. Many kids with depression will have attention deficit. Okay, so what are the difference between them? We don't really know. Why someone have depression and anxiety, the other one have only anxiety, and the other one have only depression. We know, we assume that the mechanism that underlie this are common for those type of diseases. You also need to understand the big difference between a gene and behavior. There's a lot of stages between, when I look on your gene, the level and the behavior, okay? Gene will affect the level of the protein, which eventually will affect the level of the activity of the cells. The activity of the cells will affect the activity of the network, which eventually will affect your behavior. So it's a long chain of events in between. So it's a long way. It's a very good question, but I don't think anyone has an answer. Okay.
Doctor, Dr. Chen. I'm a homeopathic doctor, and I see a lot of stress and other emotional symptoms in my patients. Homeopathy has a lot of remedies for this type of diseases or symptoms. I wanted to ask you if the Weizmann Institute is working with either homeopathy or any other alternative medicine.
No, the short answer. The reason is, I will tell you the reason, it's not that we exclude the topic. The way the Weizmann work, unlike any other place in the world, is that we are recruiting excellence, okay? We identify a very excellent person, a scientist, as long he or she are working in the field of natural sciences, yeah, biomedical, biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, we take this person, okay? We don't care. We just create the environment that this person needs. And this is a very, very smart concept, okay? Because we are not a huge place. We are not university, so we don't need to teach anyone. We don't have to have a teacher to heart or to brain. No. We just get the best, the most amazing people we can find, and we give them. And so far, people doing this type of research never came. Okay? And I think it's a show of time. When I was a student, I made the Weizmann now 23 years, which is almost half of my life, because I started as a student. Like Batya came, your daughter is a master student. Batya, their daughter, is my student now at the Weizmann. And this is where I started. Yeah, it was 95. It was impossible to say even behavior. In physiology, everything was molecules and cells. When I came back from the US, I brought with me this type of research. It was different, and now almost everyone is doing it. So there is a trend, and things are changing. People start appreciating many things like psychotherapy. I can tell you that we took blood from patients taking antidepressant, SSRI, or psychotherapy, and we see changes in the blood in all kinds of biomarkers just by psychotherapy. How come psychotherapy is changing things in the blood? Okay, but not yet. But again, anything which is working, perfect is working. I cannot argue with this. I would love to explain how, but yeah.
Vamos a tener dos preguntas más, nada más, por favor.
Which means we have another 100 questions and we have to finish.
Two questions.
Hola, les tengo faltas de ortografía. Lo más inicial que vimos fue la mujer embarazada con las bombas. ¿Estudian ustedes los efectos de la herencia genética en el comportamiento o las enfermedades de las personas? Es decir, ¿de qué manera llegan a los principios? Yo creo que la clásica expresión, ¿te pareces tanto a tu papá? Sí, eso es un aspecto genético, no es un aspecto, porque a lo mejor el papá se murió antes de que el niño pudiera siquiera heredar las costumbres o las formas. ¿Cómo ven ustedes el problema de la herencia genética en el comportamiento de las personas cuando ya están estudiando ustedes sus problemas o enfermedades?
Fantastic question. All of you understood the question, yeah? Okay. So, as I mentioned, genetics have a very important part. Okay, we cannot argue about this. You can see depression in the family. You can see schizophrenia in the family. You can see anxiety in the family. Okay, some disorders you can see more clear. Schizophrenia, for example, is very clear. You can jump some generation. You can see it in the grandfather, and then you can see it in the grandchild. Also depression and so on. But it doesn't mean that if you have those genes, you will develop depression or schizophrenia. You need the environment for this. So this is the genetic part. Okay, it's there, and this was mainly studied in the last 20 years, but it didn't give us enough solutions. Okay, I can tell you, for example, we have, it's called GWAS. We take people with the disease and we sequence the whole genome. to look for differences in the DNA. With schizophrenia, it's been done for 40,000 schizophrenia patients, and we found 47 genes which are associated with schizophrenia. However, those 47 genes can explain only 5% of schizophrenia. In depression, we already reached 140,000 depressed patients, and we found only a few genes. Okay? You know why? Meaning genetics, it's not that genetic is not important. First, it's not a single gene disease. Okay? You need all the diseases in the world which are single gene are gone. We already know about it. Those who call blindness and deafness, it's done. You can recognize them. They will not surprise us anymore. The complex diseases like schizophrenia, depression, and autism are involved in genetic changes in multiple genes, in interaction between those genes, and the interaction of the environment. Okay? So this is an important fact. And then let me say something else about what we call transgenerational transmission. This is what you ask about father to the son. Father to the son to the grandson is not only genetics, it's definitely genetics, but it's also epigenetics. Meaning, if you are an Holocaust survivor, okay, you have some signature in your DNA, not in the letter, on top of your letter, like I tried to show you. Okay, it's called epigenetic, like DNA methylation, that many people already show that can go from generation to generation. Okay? And now, at least with Holocaust survivors, we have 3 generations. And we know we have specific epigenetic mark coming from the grandfather to the mother to the grandchild. Okay? We don't know yet about the 4th generation, but this is something, this exists. It's probably will disappear with time, okay? But it's there, and we need to be aware. It's not only genetics. It's also the environment that you had as a grandparent may go to your grandkids. Okay?
Erev Tov, Prof. Nada más quisiera saber 2 puntos, aclarar 2 puntos, porque estuve yo también investigando bastante antes de la conferencia acerca de trastornos psiquiátricos. El número 1, quisiera saber por qué no se ha tocado el tema que cada vez es más común en el mundo del trastorno obsesivo compulsivo, qué es lo que dicen ustedes al respecto. Y número 2, por lo que se ve de esto, podemos deducir un poco que el DNA está actuando entonces como una especie de subconsciente. That's it.
Okay, thanks. So first, I didn't refer to everything, otherwise you're gonna sleep here. Okay, and I can talk about many things. So I didn't talk about OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, okay, which is another psychiatric disorder, but it's another, it's a book like this. There's a lot of psychiatric disorders. OCD and stress, there is link, like stress, as I mentioned, link to everything, and it can trigger the appearance of the disease. OCD do have genetic. It's not clear exactly what. There's few genes that has been identified associated with OCD, and also we know that the environment is very important, but we don't know much more about this. And then the second point about consciousness, I don't think I have a good answer for this. Consciousness is relevant for almost everything. How you perceive yourself, how you perceive the environment. This is part of you. And of course, if I will have a mouse right here now, I will pick it up and say, how sweet. Some of you will run, some of you will scream, some of you will join me. So how you perceive the world and how you respond is very individual. And it depends on your genetics, on your past experience, okay? On what we call habituation. If every day you come here to my lecture, and every time a lion will come, The first time will be very stressful, but then we learn it doesn't do anything. So after a few days, you learn you're not going to be stressed anymore about this matter. So it's a process, and we have adaptation for this, okay? I hope I answered. Okay.